This is a reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 17 and on. As he was setting out on a journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and mother." He said to him, "Teacher, I've kept all of these since my youth." Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said, "You lack one thing. Go sell what you own and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." When he had heard this, he was shocked and went away grieving, for he had many possessions. First thing, I apologize. I'm a little sick right now, so if my throat, I'm coughing or whatever, just bear with me. But this is good. I'm really excited to talk about this. So, in the spiritual life, in the interior life, whatever you want to call it, faith, walking with God, I really like thinking of it as a two-step process, where the first step is hard, and the second step is kind of what flows naturally. And this is why, I don't know, I guess there's so many people who you could call like flash in the pan Christians who are very fervent during their conversion. Maybe something bad happens to them, and they're like, "Oh, I got to do this. I got to read the Bible right away. I got to do all this." And then it doesn't stick. It's like also the parable of the sower of the seeds. Like one seed falls on rocky soil or like something, and it immediately springs up, but then it chokes because of the desires of the world or something like that. But I was reading a commentary on this passage. I read the one from Mark because I like it says Jesus looked at him and loved him, which I really like. But in Matthew, it was where the commentary was, and it was talking about how it's a two-step process, the interior life, or living a life for Christ. The first step is laid out in Jesus' first, I guess, commandments to this young man, where he's saying, if you wish to be perfect, imitating Christ, imitating the Father, being perfect, sell your possessions, give your money to the poor. Above there, he's talking about the other commandments too. Don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't bear false witness. So this is kind of like the obvious stuff we all know, like being a good person, being a good guy. And this is also kind of like secular advice too, like be kind, be loving, like don't be addicted to this, like don't be a porn addict, don't do this. Being able to, I believe in the commentary was saying like not violations of love. So it's denying ourselves, like renouncing things of the world. That's step one. And it's very important also not to do like just step one and not step two. You know, this is maybe some people will say like the problem with meditation or Buddhist philosophy or emptying ourselves. There's that other very interesting parable of the return of the unclean spirit, where a man, like, I forget exactly how it goes, but an unclean spirit leaves a man, and then it says it wanders around, and then it comes back and it finds the place empty and put in order and brings back 7 more evil spirits worse than itself, basically saying that it's not enough to rid ourselves of vice. And this is very interesting because, I mean, for me, when I began really caring about my walk with God, it was just about removing porn. That was it. I wanted to remove this vice. And then I kind of left it there for a bit. And I didn't fill it with anything. And the issue with that, again, what the Bible is telling us is that it's not just enough to do this. The young man says, "I've done these things." And Jesus is telling him further, "Sell your possessions, give money to the poor, then you'll have treasure in heaven." And I was actually reading this because it really kind of sets it up nicely. In the Bible, and for all of this, story of the rich young man is in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's, "Go sell your possessions, give money to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven." And then it's a semicolon, which is the same as like a period, or like 2 sentences. It says, "Then come, follow me." So the 2 steps, the first step, again, is basic rules, like not basically being a degenerate, like emptying ourselves. Obviously, we're still going to sin, but of like these big addictions and big vices, being able to deny ourselves. But this second step is almost easier in a sense, but where we have to get to first, and where I guess the joy of the interior life and living a Christian walk comes of following Christ and imitating and giving ourselves fully to Christ. I've recently picked up this book, The Practice of the Presence of God. Picked it up. It sounds funny. My grandmother got it for me for Christmas. I asked for it. If you're Catholic, the new Pope Leo recommended this book too. But one part of this book that kind of talks about this principle, it goes, "In the beginning, it is always necessary to be faithful, both in actions and in the renouncing of self. In the beginning, it is always necessary to be faithful both in actions and the renouncing of self. That's what I'm talking about here. This first step of walking with God, of renouncing evil in a sense, like not violating love and making sure you are not like doing something bad. It's not as much like what to do, but kind of like what not to do. Like these commandments that Jesus references here too, they're you shall not commit adultery, murder, steal, bear false witness. Obviously, like some of them are like positive commandments, like honor your father and mother, like do something. But for the most part, this first step, it's like ridding ourselves of desires for the world. And the second step, we'll go back to the book. After that, there is only indescribable joy. If difficulties arise, simply turn to Jesus Christ and pray for his grace, with which everything will become easy. I love that line too. After that, there is only indescribable joy. And this is where, I guess, in those who are like beginning walking with God, beginning, caring about the interior life, I just love that term saying too, the interior life. Like, I don't know, that's kind of what I enjoy talking about. The trouble is that the joy is in the second part. And, it would be great just to be able to show someone the first part. In fact, I was talking with a friend. This guy, I think, actually wants to be a priest, like a Dominican or a monk, like really cool dude. And we were talking about discussing the faith with others. And people often get caught up in the rules, especially, as a Catholic, we have the catechism, we have these rules, regulations, extra commandments. That's kind of confusing. That's not exactly like the right way to word it, extra commandments. But there's, especially from the outside, a lot of rules like, oh, can't do this, can't do this, can't do this. And that sort of disturbs people, even non-Catholics, just other people like, oh, like if I want to become Christian, I can't like be addicted to wealth. I can't serve God and money. Like, what the heck? And my friend was kind of saying, like, when you're pitching faith to someone else, you don't want to start with a rule book. You want to start with a relationship. And this is great. This is like, that's a beautiful sentence and a beautiful sentiment. However, I would almost argue that the problem is that if we don't start with the rules, we don't do the relationship right. That it's a painful beginning. There's another quote I heard somewhere. It's like the easy path, the path of like lust, the path of the world, of vice. It starts off easy and then it becomes hard. Well, the hard path, the bad path, no, the path begins easy and ends hard, or the path starts hard and begins easy. And in a sense, bad path, the path of the world, of material comfort, it begins easy and ends hard. Whereas the good path, the path of imitating Christ, begins hard and it ends easy. Where the difficult part is at the start. And again, like, it's cool kind of pitching it to people like a relationship. Like, oh, don't worry about the rules. Like, that becomes once you have a relationship with Christ. Yet, in my experience, the relationship with Christ and the indescribable joy that Brother Lawrence is talking about here, it comes through renouncing of self. Like, that's the term he uses. And that's why it's difficult, because especially if you're in a dark place or you want joy, you want the consolation, you get that through discipline. Going from kind of a secular view, I really like this guy Jocko Willink, and his kind of slogan, his banner is discipline equals freedom. Discipline equals freedom. This is often in terms of like working out, work-life balance, like your job, doing your job well, like getting up early, disciplining yourself with your diet, with your body, so that you can move well, have freedom of movement, disciplining yourself with your work, working early in the day so you have more freedom to do stuff after, with your finances, being able to not spend like a bozo so you have freedom to, do stuff you want with your money. This principle sort of applies here, obviously on a much deeper lens. But yeah, I just really wish it was explained to me this way when starting out. It's a discipline into a relationship. You're disciplining yourself so you can better enter into a relationship. And well, yes, like, it would be ideal to be able to experience God's love, experience this book, The Practice of the Presence of God, experience God's presence without denying yourself of these things. But that's just how it does not seem to work out, where the first step is renouncing and the second step is following God. I believe I've used this metaphor before, so I have something to draw on. Something to draw on, just real quick. I don't need something to draw on, whatever. idea of like a stump, of explaining the spiritual life, where if we picture our lives or our hearts or our souls, it's a metaphor here, as like a stump, like a log. God's grace, the Holy Spirit, whatever you want to call it, God's love is constantly pouring down on us, and the stump becomes flat. And our goal is to, empty our hearts, empty of material, of worldly desires, and kind of carve out room for God's grace to flow into us. But often what we do instead is build up on top of it. Is instead of hollowing ourselves, we build more and more and more layers of a nicer house, prettier girlfriend, I don't know, what's like a worldly thing, money, power, you know what people say. And in this, instead of emptying ourselves and allowing more of God's grace to flow into our lives and better experience the love of Christ, we are constantly building and building and building to where the water, we are getting less and less of it in our hearts and in our souls. And again, it's removing the beam of your eye. That's Jesus saying in Sermon on the Mount to the hypocrite, don't criticize the speck in your brother's eye when you have a beam in your own eye. Like, you're criticizing this small little thing in your buddy, but you got your douchebag, like you got this big old thing going wrong with you. But what people forget is that taking the stump out of your own eye, even though that is metaphor, is incredibly painful. And we don't pitch this to people enough when welcoming people into faith, that it's supposed to be at the start difficult. It's denying yourself. And people see another part, beautiful, you gotta read this book. Brother Lawrence was saying how he was almost surprised how he thought there would be more difficulties in his walk with Christ and following God, and he was surprised that he had less sufferings because of the joy of once we remove, and again, we're never fully going to remove it, we're still sinners, but more so the metaphor, removing the stump from our eye. But people forget it's a freaking stump. Like, that's painful. That's difficult. That's step one. Step one is not committing adultery, not murdering, following the commandments, being a good person, removing that stump. But again, the parable, or the parable of the unclean spirit, if we just remove, empty ourselves of worldly desires, and then don't allow God to fill it up, the evil spirits come back to us stronger and worse. Then, and only then, can we fully, once we're emptied, fully experience God's love and the grace of Christ, whatever, Holy Spirit, grace of Christ, whatever you want to call it, God. Can we better experience the presence of God by emptying ourselves? So, well, again, you can go like, oh, I don't really want to worry about, not hooking up or not drinking every night or not blacking out. I want to first experience the grace of God. If you're hungover, if you're, looking at every butt you see, if you're constantly sinning, if you're constantly in a state of sin, it can be a lot harder to quiet your mind. And it is that we are able to best experience God and the presence of God with a quiet mind and a ready heart. Not so much an empty heart, because we want our heart to be filled with God, but a heart that is not filled with desires of the world. I just want to look at my notes here real quick to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, and again, I forget what book I read this in, the kind of secular view on this advice of the good path begins hard and it becomes easy, and the hard path starts easy and becomes hard. Just looking at my notes. Yeah, it's definitely like that with walking with God, where it's very difficult at first, especially when we find ourselves trapped up in the world. And also, like, I guess, in the gym, something like that, you don't enjoy it at first. It's painful, it's annoying, you're not seeing any gains, any progress, and we're just removing stumps from our eyes. We're cleansing ourselves of sin, which is an ever-going process. But once you're able to reach a point that you can better know God, better appreciate His presence, able to pray, able to make a holy hour fully, able to pay more attention in your prayer, distractions will still come, but less and less as you purge yourself of these worldly desires, that we can better imitate Christ and know God's love. And that is where it becomes easier, it becomes more effortless. Yeah, I don't know. I also think people really don't highlight the violence that is required to eliminate this vice. Like, I talked about this, I think, in another video. The book Imitation of Christ says we must do violence to ourselves to overcome vice. In the Gospels, I believe it's in Matthew, it says the violent bear away the kingdom of heaven, or the violent take it by force, doing violence to ourselves. It is through that painful purging process that we can imitate Christ. And in a sense, Christ did the same. If we look at the Gospels, like his public ministry comes after wrestling with temptation and Satan in the desert for 40 days. It comes his ability to preach, not his ability, but his ministry comes after his like wrestling with Satan, dealing with these temptations, and likewise with us. So it's a two-step process. And the second part, in a sense, is, I mean, both are difficult in their own ways, but the second part is, I guess, kind of more simple. It's not like what not to do, but what to do. And the first part is what not to do. It's kind of a simple way to put it. Yeah, I don't know. I really like this spiritual axiom. I think that's a term, like axiom, A-X-I-O-M. Yeah, I hope this helps. God bless.